11 departments in our faculty. And this is the biggest and largest faculty of the IIM or university. And of course, Usuluddin is one of our departments in the faculty. We are having more than 5,000 students in this faculty. So, alhamdulillah, over 100 countries, we have students in our university. So, we would like to welcome our Sheikh today. And we believe that our staff, students, and we will benefit from his knowledge, his wisdom, and his thought, ideas. And I now would like to pass the floor to Assistant Professor Dr. Hussaini, who is the Assistant Professor of the Department of Quran Sunnah Studies. Please, Doctor. You can use this one.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عبده المصطفى وعلى آله وأصحابه وعلى أهل محبته وفاء والصفا وبعد. First of all, I would like to apologize. I'm thoroughly struggling with sore throat, so hopefully that I can still deliver and operate the session. Second, we welcome our Sheikh as honor today, Sheikh to the session. And it's usually this venue we host many of guest lecturers and speakers, dedicated sessions on many aspects of knowledge that are related to the mission of the Kuliah. So without delving into much discussion on other subjects, I think we all know that Sheikh Hamza is well known for his engagement with Kalam, or like for theology, and there has been talk on the idea of phases of Kalam. The first phase of Kalam, second phase of Kalam, the third phase of Kalam, which I was informed that it is now being proposed to have like Kalam 3.0, proposed, which is always attributed to Sheikh. So we would like to know more if this is the idea, or something similar to that, or what is the concern and the thing that we should pay focus, pay attention, and engage to develop further the field for the sake of the knowledge and ummah. And I think just for introduction, if this is the case, we have been dealing first. We have the triad of God, human, and cosmos. So first, we were engaging with attributes of God, Kalam, of God. Which one? How do we interpret? How do we understand it? So there were debates, disputes, discussion on the subject, and later on, we're engaging with the human aspect, which is rational, intellectual, and philosophical. So we have the debate between revelation and reason. And so it's part of the human aspect, the insight aspect. And now we are talking about engagement of Kalam with the empirical science, the cosmos. Yeah, I think that could fit the title of our session today, which is reclaiming the Kalam cosmological argument. So there are engagements between Kalam and cosmos, and particularly the empirical methodology in arriving at knowledge, or what is now known as science. So without further ado, I think that's an introduction that we assume or we would expect to have a discussion on it today. But also, our Sheikh is open to add or to amend or to whatever that can be seen as beneficial for our community here. Yes, please. Yes. So Dr. Darul, I give the floor to our Sheikh فليتفضل مشكورا.
Can I share the slides that I?
Yes. I think you have no template on you. Where is your slide?
I sent it as a PDF.
That's
Um, It's the same one, Dr. Steve?
over.
Yeah, can. This is the.
While the slides are coming up, I'll just begin just a couple of words. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I'm very honored to be here today at this very prestigious institution. And the Islamization of knowledge is something, it's one of the most important priorities of the Muslim Ummah. There's two aspects to it. I think there's one aspect which is that we need to go into the secular sciences and make them more Islamic, bring them in line with the Islamic worldview. But there's also another side to it, which is that we need to go into the Islamic sciences, and the Islamic sciences also, they need to be updated, because the issues that they were tackling, the Islamic sciences were tackling in their times, are not the same as the issues that we are tackling today. So the angle that I will be taking today, I'll be investigating an issue in philosophy. And philosophy is a very interesting area of human knowledge, because a philosopher in modern philosophy, philosophers, they are interested in truth, and they're often more open to new ways of thinking than other kinds of scholars in the secular education, in secular field. So, and I'm going to illustrate that with something called the Kalam cosmological argument. So the Kalam cosmological argument, it is a mainstream argument in Western philosophy today. In fact, it's the most widely debated and published on argument for the existence of God in modern philosophy. So the Kalam cosmological argument, it begins with something that happened in modern science, which was the discovery of the Big Bang. The slides for me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a slide for this, inshallah, it'll come. But in the 1920s, there was a discovery that was made by an American scientist called Edwin Hubble. And he observed, he brought scientific evidence that the universe is expanding. The universe is getting bigger. And this was a revolutionary discovery, because throughout human history, nobody has believed that. Everybody, Muslims, Christians, Jews, atheists, they've always believed that the universe is static, it's unchanging. When you look at the night sky, you see the stars. And the stars, they rise and set. As the earth turns, the stars, they rise and set, and they go in circles, depending on where they're located. And the ancient Greeks and the ancient civilizations, they used to look at the night sky. And this is where the constellations come from. Because the constellations, these are groups of stars, and they move together. And so, depending on the time of the year where the Earth is around the sun, and depending on the time of the night, you can look up, you can find a constellation, you can find its location in the sky, you can tell the time of the night, you can tell the time of the year, you can tell the direction in which you're going. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about this in the Quran. He says, وَبِالنَّجْمِ هُمْ يَهْتَدُونَ. He says they are guided by the stars. So so this regularity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed in the stars, it is unchanging. So the ancient philosophers, Aristotle, he said that he saw that the stars, they're moving in circles. So he used to say that there are these things called aflak, falak. And so all of this, these terms that I'm using, they made their way into our tafsir literature. So when you study tafsir al-Baydawi, you study tafsir, any of the, the late tafsirs of the Muslim scholarly tradition, they brought Aristotelian philosophy into the tafsir of Quranic verses that were talking about the universe. So they'll talk about aflak. So in English, these are called celestial spheres. So he believed, Aristotle, he said that that there's the earth in the middle, and then there's a circle. There's a globe. And the stars are embedded in this globe. And this globe, it moves. And he said there were 9, and Muslims said there are sab'a samawat. And so there's a famous tafsir discussion about like how do you reconcile 9 with 7, and are these the same or are they not? So modern science, it's founded on the refutation of Aristotle. So Aristotle's view of the universe is Earth in the middle, with these celestial spheres around it, and the sun is in one of these celestial spheres. We don't believe that anymore. We don't believe that the Earth is the center of the universe anymore. In fact, of the solar system, it's the sun in the center and the Earth goes around it. And so whether the universe is geocentric, Earth in the middle, or heliocentric, sun in the middle, is one of the defining questions of religion and science, defining debates of religion and science that occurred for the development of modern science. But the point I think that I want to take here is that because the stars, they rise and set in the same location, day in, day out, year in, year out, you can predict it. People used to look at the heavens and they said, this is constant, it doesn't change. The earth changes, the heavens don't change. And so the universe has always been viewed by everybody as static. So Muslims traditionally, when they believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of the universe, what they would believe is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created the universe in stages, 6 days or 6 periods of time. But it's static and now it's unchanging, and this is how it is. Edwin Hubble, his discovery of the expansion of the universe, which is now scientific, it's now considered scientific fact, scientific consensus. It's that at every moment in time, every point in space is moving further and further. It's expanding. So this point here, at every moment in time, there's new space that's being created, and it's expanding like a balloon. And this expansion is accelerating. It's becoming faster and faster and faster. It's not slowing down, which is a very interesting phenomenon, because what you would imagine is that as the universe is expanding, the gravity is going to pull everything together and slow it down. But when they discover, and that's what so the scientists, they wanted to believe that the universe is not changing. That's what they want to believe. And they want to believe that if it's growing faster, that it's slowing down. But it's becoming faster and faster and faster and faster. And that creates a problem. Where's the energy coming from? What's happening? Who's doing this? And so there's verses in the Quran that modern theologians have cited. وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا بِأَيْدٍ وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ, which is literally like we are right now expanding it. So it's a very powerful verse in light of this scientific discovery. Were you going to?
He's fixing.
Okay. Okay, so but what this led to was that the universe is getting bigger and bigger, and so our view of the universe has changed. And there's many other scientific discoveries that happened that led to this conclusion. There's many confirmations, and so this leads to a very interesting conclusion, because if the universe is getting bigger, 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 and if you go, then that means that if you go back in time, it's getting smaller, 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 smaller. And if you go back far enough, it's going to reach a point, and you can't get smaller than that point. And that's the beginning of the universe. So now there is in any cosmology textbook, physics textbook, high school, university, they will say, scientists, they say that the universe has an age. And they believe that it's about 14 billion years old, 13.7, the exact figure is changing, but the universe now has an age. The universe is about 14 billion years old. So this is so the universe began to exist, and the scientists, they don't want to believe this. They don't want to believe this because it creates obvious questions about what is it that made the universe exist. And it can't be from the universe. It can't be part of the universe, because before this, the universe didn't even exist. And so they started saying, God, and this is proof God, does it not prove the existence of God? And then there was a Christian philosopher and theologian. His name is William Lane Craig. This is the one, yeah. It's showing. Let me.
Just
this one.
yes.
And
Yeah, you can just
okay,
scroll down.
that was perfect. Okay. So there's a Christian philosopher. His name is William Lane Craig. And in 1979, he wrote a book called the Kalam Cosmological Argument for the Existence of God. And this is the argument that is the most widely published, widely studied, widely debated argument for the existence of God in Western philosophy today. And what he observed was, he said that there has been historically a non-scientific argument for the beginning of the universe. So the Muslims, in the books of Kalam, every single book of Kalam, it begins with something called Dalilul Huduf, which is the argument for the existence of God from the fact that the universe began to exist. Al-alam hadith means the universe began to exist. So Muslims, they have a philosophical argument for this. Now, this philosophical argument, if you read it today, it doesn't seem very compelling. You know, they talk about Jawahir, they talk about A'raf, they analyze the universe in ways that we don't talk about the universe in that way anymore. We talk about, when we're thinking about the universe, we think of atoms, molecules, mass, energy, Jawhar, Arab, what is this stuff anyway? And so it seems very foreign, it seems very Greek, you know, ancient, it seems maybe a little bit Aristotelian, although it's not, it's a refutation of Aristotle. It seems as though it comes from a different time. And that is, it's true. It's true. And this is what Professor Husseini was mentioning. This Kalam, this is what I call Kalam 2.0. It's from a different time. It's tackling a different series of problems. But there's a Christian who observed that despite the fact that this argument is tackling a different problem, despite the fact that it's couched in the language of ancient Greek philosophy, it has applications today. So he went to Imam al-Ghazali. I drove down Ghazali Road as I came here. So he went to Imam al-Ghazali, and he took his Dalil al-Hudud, and he said that, let me see how I can bring this into Western philosophy. And he says, in his words, he said, I christened the argument. I christened the argument the Kalam cosmological argument. So this is so Christian means when Christians they give a name to somebody they say Christian, but it's actually what I want to show you is that he didn't just Christian it, he Christianized it. He changed it. He didn't present it the way that it is. But the reason why he called it the Kalam cosmological argument is that historically, the only people, the only civilization that has argued philosophically for the fact that the universe began to exist are the Muslims. So Thomas Aquinas, the preeminent Christian philosopher, he believed that it's impossible to prove that the universe began to exist. He said that this is something you need to take on faith. Moses Maimonides, the preeminent Jewish philosopher, he also argued that it's impossible to show that the universe began to exist. So the Christians and the Jews, they don't have a history of this argument, but the Muslims do. And it's found in the books of Kalam. And that's why William Lane Craig, a Christian philosopher, he gave this the name, the Kalam cosmological argument for the existence of God. So this is what the argument this is what the argument looks like. We're going to be playing with this a little bit. And this is his formulation of the argument. It's not, I don't think it's the best way to formulate the argument, but he says that everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. We call this an argument. It's a syllogism. It's a formal argument. All A is B, B is C, therefore A is C. Therefore the universe has a cause. So this is his Kalam cosmological argument. Make it bigger. Full screen, right?
Thank you, sir.
So let's just go through, let's try to understand what this argument is by going through the words. Kalam, cosmological argument for the existence of God. So this is a westernization of an Islamic argument. Because in our tradition, we don't call it the Kalam cosmological argument for the existence of God. We don't have this name. It's a Western name. Our name is Dalil al-Produce. Right? We say Dalil al-Produce. They call it the Kalam cosmological argument for the existence of God. So the first thing is cosmological. Kalam cosmological argument. So in the Western tradition, there are many arguments for the existence of God. Dozens of arguments for the existence of God. And they are put into various families. So you have design arguments, you have cosmological arguments, you have ontological arguments, you have various kinds of arguments. So one kind of an argument is a cosmological argument. So the word cosmological, it comes from cosmos. Cosmos. So it's an argument for the existence of God from the cosmos, from the universe. And so there's various forms of this. Aristotle has an argument, the prime mover argument, first cause argument. There's Thomas Aquinas has a version, Ibn Sina has a version. It takes many different forms, but all of them, they argue from the universe and the cause of the universe, something like that. So there's cosmological arguments, and this is a special kind of cosmological argument. It's a Kalam cosmological argument. What does the Kalam do? The word Kalam, it qualifies it. It says that we argue for the existence of God from the universe. But what aspect of the universe? The aspect of the universe that it began to exist. So that's what the word Kalam brings in. So it's a Kalam cosmological argument. So it's a new kind of cosmological argument in the Western philosophical tradition. They don't have it. That's why it's so frequent. That's one of the reasons why it's frequently debated, because it's new and also because of the Big Bang. The second thing that I want to reflect for a moment on is that it's Kalam cosmological argument for the existence of God. Now, the word God for William Lane Craig, it does not carry the same meaning as it carries for Muslims, as it carries for the Mutakallimin. And this is one of the things that I'm going to show you. And this is one of the reasons why the argument it was Christianized. So in Christianity, it's a part of Christian belief that Jesus is God and Jesus is a human being. Jesus is a human being and Jesus died. So it's part of Christian belief that God died. It's part of Christian belief that God became one with something in the universe, the divine incarnation. So God can become part of this universe. This is part of Christian belief. So their belief in God is not the same as our belief in God. And this is going to come out in the argument that we're going to look at. So basically, we're going to see that when William Lane Craig, he says that everything that begins to exist has a cause, what he means is a supernatural cause. Supernatural cause. The word supernatural, it features in contemporary debates in this field. This is called the philosophy of religion. And the philosophy of religion is an area that Muslims have not yet entered into. And it's really important for us to enter into it. Because what is William Lane Craig doing? He's making an argument, he's using science to prove the existence of God. Now, he can't do it with the scientists. The scientists are closed-minded. They're going to say it's unscientific, unacceptable, all of the other things. But he can do it with the philosophers. Because the philosophers entertain all kinds of ideas as long as you can make an argument. So he came through philosophy and the philosophy of religion. And the philosophy of religion in recent times has undergone a huge change. It used to be dominated by atheists. But then there are a number of Christian philosophers, most notably Alvin Plantinga, he's a Christian philosopher, who completely changed the scene of the philosophy of religion. And so now somebody of religious faith and belief can enter the field fully as with their complete religious commitments and argue, make philosophical arguments. It's okay now to argue for the existence of God. It's okay now to argue for that the Prophet ﷺ is his messenger, as long as you can make an argument and defend it. So William Lane Craig, he entered into this field of the philosophy of religion, and he said, he made this argument, and what he means by cause is a supernatural cause. And in the field of philosophy of religion, the idea of God that dominates is that God is a supernatural being. Supernatural being. One of the things that I wanted to take away from this lecture is that for us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a lot more than that. A supernatural being is something that is more powerful than nature, something that can do miracles. So according to Christianity, Jesus is God, and he can be God because he's supernatural. He can work miracles. He's like Superman, right? Zeus is supernatural. And the Greek gods are all supernatural beings. So a supernatural God is someone who has power to overpower the laws of nature. So and that's what William Lane Craig is proving. He is trying to prove the existence of something that's more powerful than the laws of nature. And he's saying that the Big Bang, the thing that caused the Big Bang, has to be more powerful than the laws of nature. Because the universe and space and time and the laws of nature, they came into existence at that point. You can't point to any other natural explanation. So it has to have a supernatural explanation. And that's the angle that he takes with his argument. And this argument is used by Muslims. Muslims use this online when debating with atheists, and they don't realize that that the argument has changed, and that by making this kind of an argument, they may be committing themselves to an idea of God that is inconsistent with their Islamic commitments. So this is Kalam 3.0. It's a book. It's actually, inshallah, it's going to come out here in Malaysia in a couple of days. And hopefully I'll get you guys and some of you a copy over here. But what I've done in this book is I've taken what I call Kalam 2.0, which is, so Kalam, the idea is that the Prophet ﷺ, he appealed to reason. So when he spoke to the ancient Arabians, he used his mind and they followed the ways of their ancestors. They did taqleed. So there are many, many verses in the Quran that censure them and they said, we're just going to follow what our ancestors said. And then the first group of people who the Muslims, first intellectually sophisticated group of people who the Muslims engaged with were the Mu'tazila. And in response to them, the first Kalam was born. And it was generally reconciling reason with revelation, issues of anthropomorphism, issues of whether of seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the akhirah, issues of human free will, these kinds of issues. That's Kalam 1.0. And this categorization, it comes from the books of the Mutakallimin themselves. They call this Kalam al-Mutaqaddimin. Kalam al-Mutaakhirin, which is Kalam 2.0, it was developed by Imam al-Ghazali and people who followed him. Imam al-Ghazali has a famous book called Tahafut al-Falasifa, where he talked about the incoherence of the falasifa. Falasifa here are not philosophers. These are a particular group of Aristotelian philosophers. This is the thought of Ibn Sina. It's the thought of Al-Farabi. And so Imam al-Ghazali, and then after him, Al-Razi and others, Taftazani, they were all responding to this reality. In this reality, they had Aristotle. He was a very intelligent man, and his thoughts dominated the minds of human beings for 2,000 years. And everybody talked about Aristotle and Plato and how who was superior, how to reconcile them. So so before the emergence of the modern university, so a philosophical science, according to the Muslims, is any science where you use the mind alone to come to a conclusion. You don't use revealed knowledge. So when I do math, I say 1 + 1 = 2 because my mind says 1 + 1 = 2. I don't say 1 + 1 = 2 because it's in the Quran. So there's a category of knowledge that is philosophical knowledge. And philosophical knowledge is any knowledge that, according to the Mutakallimun, they would say that you arrive at through the mind alone. So Aristotle, Ibn Sina, others, they did physics, they did math, they did biology, they did metaphysics, they did all of these things, and they did it. They said, we're only going to use our mind. We're not going to use Quran and Sunnah. But they fell into error. They fell into mistakes. And so what Ghazali and others they did was they corrected their mistakes philosophically and brought them into line with with the commitments of revealed knowledge. So in our times, this philosophical knowledge has completely changed, right? So economics is now philosophical knowledge because you use your mind alone to come to certain conclusions. History is philosophical knowledge. Philosophy is philosophical knowledge. Anything that psychology is philosophical knowledge. So Kalam 2.0 no longer speaks to the reality that we see before us today. So what I do in this book, I choose one aspect of modern philosophical knowledge, which is materialism and naturalism, scientific materialism and naturalism, and I re-articulate the arguments of Kalam 2.0, removing the language of pre-modern natural philosophy and Jawhar and Aran, and it's in the language of atoms and molecules and space-time, and it engages and it uses a lot of the work that William Lane Craig did, because the good thing about William Lane Craig is that he sparked a conversation. He sparked a conversation around the existence of God with a Kalam argument. And so you have mathematicians talking about this argument. You have physicists talking about this argument. You have all kinds of people with their expertise, and they're bringing in these things. And so now we as Muslims, we can look at this and we can see that, okay, this point is related, and this point is related, and this point is related, and you can make a connection, and you can have a contemporary re-articulation of what they would want to say. And that's what I call Kalam 3.0. So I actually articulate the Kalam cosmological argument slightly differently. And I'll show you more about that as we proceed, inshallah. So William Lane Craig, he has a Kalam cosmological argument for the existence of God. And Kalam, it purely refers to the idea that the universe began to exist, which is a feature of Islamic theology. But it's not really Kalam proper. because he's not trained in Kalam. And Kalam proper, the Al-Mutakallimun, they would say that Kalam is علم يقتدر به على إثبات العقائد الدينية عن أدلتها اليقينية. It's a science that enables you to prove the truth of religious beliefs with their conclusive proofs. So they developed rational arguments to show that Islam is true. And they were derived from the Quran, and they're found in books of tafsir. So with that historical introduction, I want to show you one mistake that William Lane Craig makes and how we would correct it by going back to its articulation by Imam al-Ghazali. And I've called this "Can Something Come from Nothing?" And the reason why I call it this is because, so if you look at the argument, so what is the first premise of the argument is everything that begins to exist has a cause. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. So it seems obvious to us, right? Because we're Muslims. But there is with scientists, they have most scientists are materialists. A materialist is someone who believes that the only thing that exists is the physical universe. And so when they say that the physical universe is everything that exists. And so in order for me to explain something, the explanation has to come from the physical universe. There has to be a materialist scientific explanation for something. And that's a scientific explanation. So now when it comes to the question of the beginning of the universe, they can't give a materialist explanation. Because before the universe, there is no matter. Right? So they say, so one of the things that they say is, okay, this is beyond science, and you can't give a scientific explanation, and causation is related to materialism. It doesn't need a cause. It's a very simple kind of explanation. I'll give you a more sophisticated articulation, but that's the way that scientists think. They deny the fact that the universe has a cause for its existence because they can't find a material cause, because they say everything has to have a material cause. And so when William Lane Craig, when he articulates his argument, this is where he begins. He says everything that begins to exist has a cause. He is speaking to people, materialists today, who will deny that on grounds of materialism. So this is important for us to understand, because when Imam al-Ghazali articulated this argument, he wasn't talking to materialists. Imam al-Ghazali was talking to Ibn Sina. Ibn Sina wasn't a materialist. Ibn Sina believed in the existence of something like God. He had problems with his conception of God, but he believed that the universe depends on something else. Ibn Sina believed in God, didn't believe the universe began to exist. Scientists today don't believe in God, and they believe the universe began to exist. Right? So there's the playing field has completely changed. So that's why you can't, when you take Imam al-Ghazali, brilliant scholar, right? He's my favorite, one of my favorite. But he came from a time. He came from a time. He's talking to a particular group of people. So we can still learn things from him. So Imam al-Ghazali would say everything that begins to exist has a cause because, and this is a new technical term. He says because the existence of anything that begins to exist is contingent. So there's this word called contingent, which Muslims, they said mumkin. So we have two arguments. The Mutakallimin they have two arguments. They have Dalilul Huduth and they have Dalilul Imkan. Dalilul Imkan is an argument for the existence of God from the fact that the universe is contingent. It's possible. So the idea here is that when I see something, when I look at the leaves of the tree. So now I can use this example in Istanbul. It's difficult to use in tropical countries because leaves are always green here, right? So, but in Istanbul, the leaves they turn brown. So you look at the leaf and it's green, and then it's brown. And so what does that mean? It means that it doesn't have to be green. It can be brown. So when it's green, you say, why is it green and not brown? And when it's brown, you say, why is it brown and not green? It needs a reason. So whenever something changes, it proves that it needs something else to make it the way that it is. It means that the way that it is not necessary. It's not essential to it. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ard wa ikhtilafi al-layli wan nahar, you have night, you have day, you have night, you have day, you have night, you have day. You see, when you say night, it could have been day. When you have day, it could have been night. And so it needs something. So the day needs something to make it day, and the night needs something to make it night. So change is evidence of contingency. That something is, it's the way that it is not essential to it. And since it's not essential, something else needs to make it that way. So if something begins to exist, what does it mean? It means it didn't exist, and then it existed. That means its existence is not essential to it. And that means that its existence is contingent, and it means that it needs something else to make it exist. So that's the way that Imam Ghazali would look at it. That's the way the Mutakallimin looked at it. They said that the existence of anything that begins to exist is contingent, it's not intrinsic, and it's dependent on an external cause. That's the way that we reason. William Lane Craig, he gives different answers. He doesn't say this. He doesn't say this. Because if he says that, if he says what Imam Ghazali says, he can't say that Jesus is God. If he says what Imam Ghazali says, he can't say that God became part of the universe. That's what I'm going to explain to you. And so what William Lane Craig does is, he formulates the argument in a way that allows him to say, and he does in his paper, the Cosmological argument, that after God created the universe, he came into the universe. He became part of the universe, which is part of the Christian belief in the incarnation. And he has to justify that. So he uses different ways. Right? So he says, and these ways are used by Muslims. Muslims on YouTube debating atheists, they're using these same things, but they're foreign to our theology, our tradition. So William Lane Craig, he says that from nothing, nothing comes. Ex nihilo, something feels. What is it? Creation ex nihilo. Creation ex nihilo. But there's something else. There's another Latin phrase, ex nihilo something feels, which means that from nothing, nothing comes. And this is a statement of one of the ancient Greek philosophers. He said, from nothing, nothing comes. Nothing comes from nothing. So I want you to, so what is Craig saying? Craig is saying that the universe began to exist. It could not have come from nothing. Because nothing comes from nothing. Nothing comes from nothing. He'll say the chicken comes from the egg comes from the chicken, the seed comes from the tree, everything comes from this. And so from nothing, nothing comes. So the universe as well, it has to come from something. It can't come from nothing. So now it seems okay so far, but it's not okay. Because what he's doing is he is treating God as though he's a contingent thing. And the other thing is he is actually assuming that things in the universe, they come from other things in the universe. But so he is assuming, he has a worldview where where things in the universe are independently making something else happen. And that is, so this is a weak materialism. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, Alam yaraw ila at-tayri fawqahum safatin wa yaqulun ma yumsikuhunna illa ar-rahman. Nobody holds them in the sky except Allah. It's not the air pressure. The air pressure is there. It's related. But the one who is doing everything is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah creates everything from nothing. So things do come from nothing. Allah creates them from nothing. And Allah doesn't come from anything. And so this is going to be problematic. This is one of the things that he does. And so those of you who might have watched William Lane Craig, the things he says that if universes came from nothing, then other things would too. We would suddenly just see things popping into existence everywhere. But actually, like according to the Big Bang theory, there's something that is being created every moment, at every point in space. Right? So there is actually creation that is happening at every moment in space. And he also says that there's empirical confirmation of this. Now, what we should say is, we shouldn't say from nothing, nothing comes. We should say from nothing, nothing contingent comes. That's what we should say. But as for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if Allah exists, is not contingent, He's necessary, He's wajib al-wujud, He doesn't need anything to make Him exist. So Imam al-Ghazali, he says, so that's the first premise. The first premise is everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause to its existence. Now, according to Imam al-Ghazali, what does he say? He says that the universe has a cause, and the cause of the universe did not begin to exist. So he says that that if the universe began to exist, something made it exist, but that thing that made it exist cannot need something to make it exist. Because if it did, then it would need something else to make it exist, and then that thing would need something else to make it exist, and then that thing would need something to make it exist. And so the one who makes the universe exist needs to be independent, needs to be qadim, and needs to exist necessarily. His existence needs to be necessary, needs to be intrinsic to him, not given to him by anything else. And this also entails transcendence, that he doesn't resemble anything in the universe. He's not contingent. He's not like anything in the universe. He doesn't become like God doesn't incarnate in the universe. That's not possible. William Lane Craig, he says that the cause of the universe is uncaused and spaceless and timeless. So because that cause existed before space, before time. So he's saying the cause is a supernatural cause, but later on it enters into time. So his idea of God is a supernatural, immaterial God. It's not a necessary being. And that's what allows him to say that God enters into time after the universe begins to exist. Now, there's an atheist objection by a famous atheist called Mackey. And he said this. This is how he objects to William Lane Craig. He said there is no good reason why a sheer origination of things not determined by anything should be unacceptable, whereas the existence of a God with the power to create something out of nothing is unacceptable. What is he saying? He is saying to William Lane Craig, he says, okay, so you're saying that the universe began to exist, and everything that begins to exist has a cause, and so you're positing God as the cause of the universe. But he says there is no reason why the fact that the universe began to exist means that it needs something to make it exist, but that God is somehow different from the universe and doesn't need anything to make him exist. That's his objection. And so according to Imam al-Ghazali, the way that he would respond, he would say that no, there's a difference. The universe is mumkin. The universe is something that needs something to make it exist. But I've already shown you that the one who made the universe exist is necessary, doesn't need anything to make him exist. So since the universe is contingent, I'll take questions inshallah after this. I know that it's quick, but since the universe is contingent, it needs something to make it exist. But God is necessary; it doesn't need anything to make him exist. And so Imam Ghazali has a good answer to this atheist, but Craig does not. His answer, if you look at it, he completely misses the point. A little bit complicated. I'm not sure if it's worth explaining the complexity of his incorrect answer. But basically, he misses the point and he doesn't do a good job answering the atheist. So is the cause of the universe uncaused? Ghazali says yes, because it exists necessarily. And Craig says yes, because it's immaterial, initially changeless, although it later changes. But if it later changes, that means it's contingent. If God was one way and then he became part of the universe and then he died, then it means that he needs something to make him exist. So that would mean that on the Christian commitment to their belief in God, the cause of the universe cannot be uncaused, and so they haven't really proven the existence of God, even though they are using the Kalam cosmological argument to do so. Now I have some more, but maybe this is a good time to pause for questions or comments. We can go back and forth. If we have time, then I can explain some more.
So I thought we have until 4:30, right?
I think for 20, 30 is.
No, I mean, we can stop at 4.
Yeah.
Open for Q&A, or we can just have
So-
like 5 minutes Q&A.
So how is everybody going? Like, is everybody? I can make it. I feel I'm fearful that I might be losing somebody. So
Yeah.
if there's somebody who has a related question, maybe you can ask now. Then I'll continue.
Yes,
I have
better.
I mean, questions that are related to the slides, but questions which are beyond this, we can ask after the session.
Yeah.
Okay, so what questions related to this?
Yeah. So
slides,
related to
we
anything.
have at the moment. Anyone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you just repeat the Imam Ghazali's argument in a more simplified manner?
Yeah. So Imam Ghazali's argument, so it actually returns to another argument that I call the Quranic contingency argument. I'm going to explain I'll explain now actually. But the idea is that when I look at the things in the universe, I see that the things in the universe are dependent because they're changing, and when they're changing, it means that the way that they are is not intrinsic to them. So they need something else to make them the way that they are. So if I take a line of people, so I take Zayd, and he leans back on Amr, and Amr is supporting him. But let's say that Amr then leans back, and the guy behind him supports him. And let's say that so now you have two people leaning back, being supported by a third person. Now look at the person in the middle, right? So I have here the number 1, number 2, number 3. So number 1 is leaning on number 2. Number 2 is leaning on number 3. So what does that mean? It means that number 2 isn't doing anything. Number 1 is just being supported by 3. So if I have one person leaning back on another person who's also leaning back, and there's a third person at the end, if I take the third person away, they're all going to fall down. So there's a principle. The principle is that if A depends on B and B depends on C, then B isn't doing anything. A just depends on C. Okay? So now if you take this principle, you can grasp very quickly that if you keep on adding people who are leaning, you haven't found anything for anything to lean on because you're just passing the buck. Every time you add a leaning person, you're not improving the situation. You're making the situation worse because now you don't have one person to support, but you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So what this reveals is that scientific explanations are based on this. So this is a Quranic argument, right? So when Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says Allahu Samad, As-Samad, the Mufassirun, they say He is the one who is needed by everyone, but who He Himself doesn't need anyone. And in books of tafsir and all the Islamic sciences, when you come to the word Allah, they always define Allah as alamun ala dhat al-wajib al-wujud. Al-mustahiq li jami' al-mahamid, the proper name for the being that exists necessarily. What is wajib al-wujud? It means the one who everything needs, he doesn't need anything. So what this does is this proves materialism. This shows that right now, because what does science say? Science say that when science says, for example, that the rain is caused by the condensation of the clouds. So there you are explaining rain, something contingent, with reference to something else that is contingent. So you're leaning something on something else. But then this other thing, the condensation of the clouds, is also contingent. It needs an explanation. So you search for another explanation and then you lean it on that. Now, by definition, if science assumes materialism, every time they give an explanation, they're going to explain something material with something else that's material. And all material things are contingent. They're all changing. They all need something else to make them the way that they are. So what materialism does is it sets up it's analogous to setting up a long line of people leaning on each other with nothing to lean on. So what this shows is that it's not true. It's not true that other things are really causing something else to happen. But what's actually happening is that that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing everything, and you have asbab. You have a sabab and you have a musabbab. Allah creates the sabab and He creates the musabbab, and there's a regular association between them. So your perception of the universe changes and materialism is gone. Materialism is gone. So the problem with science today is materialism. This is the problem. And so when you with the Quranic contingency argument, you eliminate materialism, and the way that you look at the universe changes. So what was happening over here when Imam al-Ghazali, when he said that when Imam al-Ghazali says that the cause that the universe has a cause, what he's basically saying is this is the argument that he's making. He says that the universe needs something. But the thing that it depends on cannot be contingent. It cannot be needy. It has to be something that is independent. That's independent. That doesn't need anything. So the Imam al-Ghazali's argument, it proves the existence of someone who does not depend on anything, and everything depends on him. And that being is transcendent, because if it was material, it would be contingent. So now, because Imam al-Ghazali has proven the existence of something that is independent, that's unlike the universe, and I've proven rationally that it exists, when the atheist says that an uncaused God is like an uncaused universe, we say no. The God exists necessarily, the universe is contingent, they're not the same. An uncaused universe is problematic because the universe needs something to make it the way that it is. But an uncaused God is not problematic. In fact, it's totally rational and necessary, because if that uncaused God was not there, nothing in the universe would be there. Nothing in the universe would be the way that it is. So an uncaused God is not like an uncaused universe, according to Imam al-Ghazali. But since William Lane Craig does not do that, what does he do? He focuses merely on the fact that the Big Bang, the cause of the Big Bang, needs to be something that doesn't exist in time and space. That's the only thing. But is it possible for things to exist, not to exist outside time and space and be contingent? It's possible, right? And that's the conception of God that he has. So he's unable to escape from this atheist objection. Now, nobody has pointed this out. So this is something that, so I'm saying, this is my claim, right? So because why hasn't anybody pointed this out? Because Muslims, using their own tradition, they have not yet engaged the public mainstream. Even though one of their own arguments is being used by a Christian, and it's the most widely debated and published on arguments for the existence of God, and he's doing it wrong, and he's making mistakes, and he's getting away with things, right? But this is a mistake. This is a mistake, and so what we do here is we actually agree with the atheist, and we say that the Christian is wrong, which for many Muslims it seems very difficult to do. How can you agree with an atheist, right? How can you agree with an atheist? But Christian arguments for theism are predominantly flawed. And that's one of the things that a Kalam perspective shows. And it's all based on, it goes back to the Quranic contingency argument, because Christians are weak materialists. They believe that there's things in the universe actually make other things happen, and they believe in the existence of supernatural beings or being, depending on the Trinity is 3 or 1, whatever. You know. So did that help clarify?
Yeah.
Did that clarify? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go on.
No, I just want to ask, is the Christian weak materialist position equal to the emanationist position of the Neoplatonists?
Very good question.
Yeah.
They're different. They're different. So the Neoplatonism is grounded in a necessary being. In a necessary being that does not have will, from which everything emanates.
Necessarily.
Necessarily. Christianity is not grounded in a necessary being. So one of the things with Kalam 3.0 is that Neoplatonic emanationism is no longer relevant because they're not an opponent anymore. Nobody believes in it. So we yeah.
السلام عليكم.
Yeah.
الحكمة طارت المؤمن حيث وجدها التقطها. Wisdom is lost property for Muslim. Wherever we find, we pick up. Thank you, Sheikh Hamza. We try to bring your very good endeavor, try to bring the science back to Muslim property. If I'm not mistaken, so far you have talked about this syllogism.
Pardon me?
Syllogism.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which come from the ancient Greek thought, which has been used by this ulama, great ulama like Ibn Rushd, Ibn Sina, in their writing of their books, logic. Yes. So this argument has been going on, for millennium years. not very new years. It's like this. And somehow you added some new elements then by your very presence. Yeah. Try to connect the science with Muslim Kalam. Alhamdulillah.
To have
My
just-
question is,
yeah.
my question is, okay. Allah khalaqa samawat, sab'a samawat wal ard. How do you understand the sab'a samawat? Because in modern science context so far has been proved this code. There's no 7 layers of code. Something like circle. There's a circle, above circle, 7 circles. And what up? Because up is singular. Samawat is plural. Yes. Sab'a samawat. As my question. Thank you.
It's like the interpretation of Sabah Samawat.
Yeah, so basically, like my answer is very quick, like I don't know. So that's, and I don't think that I thought about it in light of modern science and everything. So I don't think that I feel that I believe it's from the ghaib, and it's from the things that we cannot know for certain. So that's my
Can I
So,
ask a couple of historical questions?
let me do you have anything related to what I said? Did I
Yeah, a
miss-
little bit.
Okay, if it's related, then go ahead, inshallah. And then I'll take other things.
Is it true that the mutaqaddimun mutakallim, they relied more on the dalilul hudus instead of dalilul imkan? Because that's what I read. They are the one.
Yeah, this is a good question.
Yeah.
And so the primary opponents of Muslims historically have been, as you mentioned, it's been the Neoplatonist philosophers. And that was the dominant science and philosophy of the time in which they lived. So when the translation movements are happening, these are the ideas that are coming in. So as the Muslims are talking to them, they are speaking to people who believe in a necessary being, but they believe that that necessary being does not have will and power, and that the universe did not begin to exist. It's qadim, because it's a necessary emanation through a series of emanations, unity, multiplicity, until it gets to where we are. So as they are looking at these people, then for pragmatic purposes, the best arguments to use right now is an argument for the fact that the universe began to exist. Because if you prove that the universe began to exist, then what you prove is that the necessary being cannot be, the things must have an irada, because because the universe now did not exist and it began to exist. That means it was chosen. If it was an emanation, it would have been eternal. It would have been, and so it proves irada, it proves the beginning to exist of the universe, and you take this person to the goal that you want to take them to. Dalilul Imkan, it existed in amongst the Falasifa. And the Dalilul Imkan, it existed, Ibn Sina. Ibn Sina, he had I have a lecture on lots of theology about this as well. But basically what Ibn Sina did was he had a very good contribution, because they say that he made this thing called essence existence distinction, which is basically he transformed Aristotelianism from being something that looks at potentiality and actuality to being something that looks at contingency and necessity. And that was a brilliant move. And he did that based on his Muslim, based on the fact that he recited the Fatiha. But he made mistakes. So that insight, it was something that became part of falsafa, Muslim falsafa, which then went to Aquinas, went to Maimonides, and so they articulated the Dalilul Imkan. So Dalilul Imkan was well known. It was accepted by the Mutakallimin as well. The Mutakallimin, they have a debate. They say that which one is more fundamental? What is the basis of the universe's existence, neediness for God? Is it Imkan or is it Hudus? And amongst the Mutaakhirin of Mutakallimin, they say it's Imkan. Right? They actually, so this is like a history. But so in the Kalam 3.0, what I believe that the real Hudus, Kalam cosmological argument should no longer be front and center. Because I think that now we are speaking to people who are materialists, who don't believe in a necessary being. And the first thing you have to do is you have to refute materialism, because that's the biggest barrier. And the way to refute materialism is the contingency argument that I've just explained. It gets rid of materialism, and it then gives you because all of the objections that come against the Quran cosmological argument, they all assume some kind of materialism, which I'm going to show you in a second. So what I think that the primary argument that we should make in our times is this, because the KCA, because we're speaking to people, you're trying to prove the universe began to exist to people who already believe that it began to exist, right? That's the scientists now. And they don't believe in a necessary being, but the KCA actually assumes that with the people that they're speaking to. So it's not a good fit. It's a good argument, but it's not a good fit for the people that you're speaking to. So it needs to be engaged in. It's useful to be engaged in because it's there in the mainstream of philosophy, and I show that as well how to do that. But the argument that needs to be front and center is the human impact. It's contingency, and it's very simple, very intuitive. Anybody can grasp it. And these arguments, they have to be easy, because our responsibility to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so let me just, that was a good question. It was I think both of these they help. But so this is the Quranic contingency argument, and this is a demonstration that it comes from the Quran. And this here is it's a little bit small. Let me zoom in. There you go. So So this is from the excerpt from the book. So what I basically do is I take all of the arguments and I put them into syllogistic form. So so syllogisms are, I think that as the professor said, I think not a lot of movement. But there are, just as in our times we use when we take aspirin, we take medicine, we drive cars, we learn physics, and the fact that all of these things come from non-Muslims does not mean that we don't benefit from them and use them, because they're true, they're right? And so similarly, the organization of thought using syllogisms, it's very useful, and it organizes your thinking, and it becomes like pieces of a puzzle, and they reflect how we think actually. So here, this is because what you do is, so here this is an argument, right? So this is a formal presentation of the Quranic contingency argument. You see, the universe is contingent. Every contingent thing depends on a necessary being to make it the way that it is. Therefore, the universe depends on a necessary being to make it the way that it is. This is so useful, because what it means is that if somebody admits the first premise, QC1, and they admit the second premise, QC2, they have to admit the conclusion. And if they deny the conclusion, they're only entitled to deny it if they don't accept one of these two premises. So now, if somebody comes and says that, how can you believe in God when there's a 4-year-old child who died a painful death of cancer? And where's God when that happened? So now what do we say? We say, okay, I gave you an argument. The universe is contingent. Do you agree with that? Yes. Every contingent thing depends on a necessary being to make it the way that it is. I illustrated that with a line of people. Do you agree with that? I agree with that. Then you have to agree. You have to agree that the universe depends on a necessary being to make it the way it is. You don't have any choice. So I can say that I'm not sure why that happens, but this exists. The necessary being exists. And then you can actually go further than that, and you can say that, well, actually, the 4-year-old child who died of cancer, wasn't cancer contingent? It was. Wasn't it a change? It was. Therefore, the cancer is evidence for the existence of a necessary being, and if it weren't for a necessary being, it wouldn't have happened. So it's actually become an argument for the existence of God instead of being an argument against the existence of God. But why would God do that? Well, there's some wisdom in it. Maybe I understand, maybe I don't, but He did it. So this kind of organizing our arguments in this way is very practical. It's very useful, and it enables you, instead of being in response mode, which I feel that we are, that people, atheists, they say, how do you respond to this? How do you respond to this? I think what we need to do is we need to say, stop, wait a minute, listen to me first. Here you go, this is why God exists, this is why the Prophet is God's messenger. Now you tell me, why don't you believe in this, right? You've completely changed the playing field. So, and that's what these arguments, they enable us to do. So this is the Quranic contingency argument formally presented. In the middle, there is, so at the end, there's something called non-inferential or inferential. An inferential premise means that it has a sub-argument. So when the universe is contingent is non-inferential. That means that it's self-evident. You don't need to make a proof for it. But the second one, you need a proof for it. And so since you need a proof for it, you need another argument. And so I have a separate argument that whose conclusion is this, until everything resolves to first principles. And that is, now all of the possible lines of defense are clearly articulated. And you can now use that to make connections with contemporary philosophy. And I also look at all many kinds of contemporary objections and how this can be used to respond to them. I wanted to share two with you, and I wanted to show you how these arguments, and if you refute materialism first using the Quranic contingency argument, you can get rid of things. You can see things a lot clearer. So first of all, you have to define materialism. So what is materialism? Materialism is the belief that the physical universe, meaning mass, energy, and space-time, is everything that exists. This is a departure from Kalam 2.0. Because if you look at Kalam 2.0, they say that the universe is Jawhar and Aram. That's how they define the universe. And their opponents are the Falasifa, who say that the universe is Hayula and Sura, which is prime matter and form. And so these are debates that people had about the nature of the universe. And I think, this is, I think like, I don't, they're unrelated. Like, we don't need to, like, you don't need to believe that the universe is composed of Jawhar and Arad in order to prove the existence of God. So what this does is it completely ignores that aspect. And everything is expressed using the way we understand the universe today. So if the physical universe is mass, energy, and space-time, what is materialism? This is the belief that they say that mass, energy, space-time is everything that exists. And the Quranic contingency argument that I just showed, it shows that this materialism is false. Because in order for the physical universe to exist, a non-physical necessary being must also exist. Therefore, the physical universe is not everything that exists. So we've disproved materialism. And you've actually shown that everything directly depends on a necessary being too. So now, if you look at some of the objections to the KCA, so this is one of the objections to the Kalam cosmological argument. So William Lane Craig, he says that his articulation is the universe began to exist. Everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. The universe has a cause for its existence. So here's an objection. Okay, so this is what people say now, and this is important for us to understand and respond to. So quantum physics. So in quantum physics, it's physics of small scales, very, very small scales. So on small scales, physicists observe something called virtual particles coming into existence, they say uncaused, spontaneously. So you have something called the quantum field, and particles can come into existence, and the likelihood of their coming into existence can be described with a probability distribution. So you can have a mathematical formula, and you can work out the probability of something coming into existence like this, and there's nothing that you can point to say that it caused it. So what physicists, and that's why even things like electrons in science, you can't pinpoint its location. It's described using a probability. So on small scales, science, physics has become probabilistic. And that's led scientists to say that things actually don't need causes, but things can spontaneously come into existence by a certain probability, particularly at small scales. And this is prevailing scientific belief. So what they say that, okay, the universe began to exist. Okay, now when the universe was close to the first time of its existence, it was really, really small. And since it was so small, the laws of quantum physics apply. And with quantum physics, things can come into existence spontaneously. And so therefore, the universe, we have scientifically proven that the universe can come into existence without a cause, right? So Lawrence Krauss has a book about this, right? It's called Universe from Nothing. Lots of other people have written about this. But this is a common objection. It's an objection to the fact that things need causes. So now, Craig has a response to this. And I don't agree with his response. I don't think it's a good response. I don't think, and I could have shown you, but it would have gone long. But let me just tell you what we think, what our response, what the response of Mutakallimun would be. So what we do is, first thing we do is we deny that virtual particles come into existence uncaused. So what's happening here? What's happening here is that the quantum physicist, he sees something coming into existence and he can't find a material cause. And he's coming with an assumption. What's his assumption? His assumption is that the physical universe is everything that exists. Material things are everything that exists. So since something comes into existence and he can't find a material cause, he says there is no cause. So the reason for scientists saying that things are happening uncaused is because they've assumed materialism. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get rid of materialism. And you use the Quranic contingency arguments to show that everything that comes into existence, everything that's contingent, it depends on a necessary being. So we deny that virtual particles come into existence uncaused. And what we need to do is we explain that the reason why quantum physicists make this mistake is that they falsely assume materialism and naturalism, which leads them to imagine that all causes are material. As a result, when they don't observe any material cause for a quantum event, they fallaciously conclude that there is no cause at all. What's the way out of this mistake? The way out of this mistake is to begin our arguments using QC. So this is another reason why. So you actually, before you do the Kalam cosmological argument, you have to do the contingency argument. Because you have to get rid of materialism, because the objections to the Kalam cosmological arguments assume materialism. And this is why, in our times, the contingency argument needs to be front and center, and not the Hadoop argument. Because now when we do QC, we prove it's false, and so now this is happening, and the necessary being is making it happen, and the causal principle is there. I don't need to throw away. I don't need to say that anything happens uncaused. The only thing that's happened is that there's no material cause that I can point my finger to, right? So this is an objection to one of the premises, and this is a response. And you can do this in great detail. And I have this like a couple of dozen objections, and all of these are contemporary objections. So if you open up Kalam 2.0, they do this, but they do this with objections that come from 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago. They come from objections to people who are Neoplatonists, and these are not practical. Like they're not like there's no, you don't need them, right? But we still have unfortunately people studying them is useful. Like if it's useful to study Aristotle, it's more useful to study Kalam. But you have to understand that when you're studying this, it comes from a time that we don't exist in anymore, and you can't just take those things and apply them. There's a way to apply it. So here's another objection. This is an objection that we started with, and we'll finish with this, inshallah, and then I'll open for Q&A. But this objection is called the materialist objection. And this is the objection that I started with. And this is the objection that's on the mind of most scientists. Most scientists, they say that since mass, energy, and space-time are everything that exists, materialism. And since there was no mass, energy, or space-time before the universe began to exist, Big Bang, it follows there was nothing before the universe to make it exist. Therefore, the coming to existence of the universe is a brute fact. And maybe one day science will discover it. So this is very common. This is actually, it's a more precise articulation of what most scientists believe in than they themselves will tell you. They'll just say, like, I'm not bothered by it, but why do they say this? This is why they say this. So you bring this out, and so what's the problem? The problem is that they're assuming materialism, and we say, well, I deny that mass, energy, and space-time are everything that exists. The Quranic contingency argument disproves that. And then you show that this happens because of materialism. And the way out of this mistake is to begin our arguments by using QC to prove that materialism is false. You do that, then you make the KCA, then you make the Kalam cosmological argument. And now it's immune to the objections that are being made today. So Craig, when he responds to these objections, he responds as weak materialist. He doesn't respond as somebody who believes in the existence of a necessary being on whom everything completely depends. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And
thank you very much, Sheikh. Then I'm opening for the Q&A. Yes, brother.
The person I'm listening to, normally I watch you this thing. So thank you very much for coming here and presenting the I have a couple of questions. What I understood first, you have organized these arguments so that it will help us to get the result, outcome, that how God exists in our theology. Because the way you explained the difference between the Kalam cosmological argument and this, it's probably the order of argument first. Let's say the contingency argument, that should be emphasized more than the Kalam cosmological argument. So my first question is, there's an idea in the scientific community that multiverse theory.
Yeah.
So there's multiple universe. Well, what is your response then? If we take the Kalam cosmological argument, does that solve the problem of multiverse? Or if we take the contingency argument more, then that solves the, that justifies the existence of
Okay. Okay, so the question about the multiverse. So let me just explain. So the Kalam 2.0 is not just about belief in God, it's also belief in the prophets also being the messengers of God. Because we also have arguments for that, and those are also articulated, because that's how you show that Islam is true. You have to go all the way. That's the first thing. Second thing, okay, so multiverse objection. Multiverse objection, it comes, and I treat it in the book as well, but it doesn't come with QC or KCA. It actually comes with a design argument. Because the way the multiverse objection is an objection to a Christian who is saying that if you look at the fine-tuning of the constants of the universe, they're so precisely fine-tuned, 1 over like unimaginable number of zeros, it's highly improbable that this could have happened by chance. So the multiverse objection says it's improbable if there's one universe. But if there's millions of universes, now there's so many, it's no longer improbable. In fact, there's so many that it has to happen in one. And we happen to be in that universe. And so that's the multiverse. It's the multiverse objection to one form of the design argument. There's 2 forms of the design argument. I discussed both of them in the book as well. So there's a design argument that is based on it's evolutionary, designing natural beings in living things. And then other version is on physics, which is the one that I just articulated. Multiverse's objection to that. So now let's take the Quranic contingency argument. What does it show? It shows that contingent things depend on something that is independent. Okay, somebody says, okay, there's multiverses, there's million things. You go, great. Now we have a million more contingent things to prove the existence of a necessary being, right? You know, so there you go. So and you don't. It's so simple, right? And and the KCA, like how would the KCA go? If you wanted to apply multiverse to KCA, what they would say is that okay, this universe began to exist, but there's a million others that didn't begin to exist. I'll give you, for argument's sake, the fact that a million universes didn't begin to exist, even though philosophically Muslims can show that everything began to exist. I also have an articulation of that. But the fact that one universe began to exist proves the existence of someone who made it exist, the necessary being. All of these arguments are still there, and so the conclusion is still there. So now Christians, they like the design argument, and the reason why they like the design argument is because it proves the existence of a supernatural being. It proves the existence of something that cannot be explained by the laws of nature. So that's what they're doing, and so they're proving the existence of a supernatural being. So let them deal with their problems. Right? Why do I need to go and solve their problems when they put themselves into it and they're incoherent? So but what do Muslims say? They hear the word multiverse, science, I have to respond to it. And so the most common response to multiverse is that, well, it doesn't have any evidence. You're just imagining things. But I don't think that's a good answer. I don't think that's it. I think you should say that they're all contingent, and that's even more reason to believe in God. And that will catch them by surprise. And nobody's saying this. Nobody is saying this, right? And that's why this work is so important, because Muslims have not yet entered into the philosophical mainstream, and the way is open. It's wide open, right? So
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Last question.
Okay.
The statement of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, "La uhibbul argument." Is that somehow resonates with the idea of continuous argument?
yeah, he's saying that things change, and since they change, they're dependent. So I don't worship things that are dependent.
Okay. Another
Sorry.
Baris. Sorry. Yeah. Baris.
I want to ask about, I know I just discussed it. We are engaging with the not being able to find the existence of God. So we use the Kalam condition, but because you use so my question is one about the human mind we spoke the materialism on
Yeah.
the man that link to another one,
Yeah.
so that all of the men in the center didn't do anything, say like that.
Yeah.
So isn't it we like it is like we just fall into the trap of like framework with someone, because if the personalism of Ghazali is every one person have the direct structure.
Yeah. So so the question is that I talk about this in the book as well, but basically when you have the long line of leading people, that is it's not an analogical inference. We're not making qiyas on that. Right? But what we're doing is we're using that to illustrate an idea. And the idea is that if A depends on B and B depends on C, B isn't doing anything. And A just depends on C. And it can be illustrated using this. Another one of my students, he illustrated it a different way. He said that let's say you have a person standing on the shoulders of another person, standing on the shoulders of another person, standing on the shoulders of another person, and there's no ground. So he illustrated it like that. You can come up with many different thought experiments. But all of these are physical aids to help you understand an abstract idea. And the abstract idea is that if A depends on B, B depends on C, B isn't doing anything, A depends on C. Now, given that, the long line of leading people, actually, the way to make the argument is not to have anything at the end. The way to make the argument is it's a proof by contradiction. I say, let's assume that contingent things make other contingent things exist. That puts us into a situation where the only thing you have is leaning people and with nothing to lean on. And that means that you have nothing to make anything the way that it is. Therefore, there's nothing to make the leaves green or make them brown, make them anything. Therefore, the assumption is false. Therefore, contingent things don't make other contingent things the way that they are, and everything directly depends on a necessary being, which is exactly what Ghazali is saying.
So yes, but
The Kalam cosmological argument. So some claim that it came from Greek philosophy and unmoved mover, the idea of unmoved mover. What do you think? Is there any connection? I mean,
So okay, so the way there is so it definitely doesn't come from the idea of the unmoved mover, because in the unmoved mover, what you're doing is it's a first cause argument. In a first cause argument, there's one thing that activates the next thing, that activates the next thing, that activates the next thing. It's like you're lining up dominoes, you're pushing the first one and then they're falling down. That's why in all of the illustrations that I use, I'm leading them backwards. And it's a different kind of argument. Now that's one thing. Now another thing is that the way that the Muslims the way that they viewed ancient Greek philosophy was through the lens of وَإِن مِّنْ أُمَّةٍ إِلَّا خَلَا فِيهَا نَذِيرٌ, which means that there was not a single people except that a prophet was sent to them. And they viewed that every single prophet and messenger brought arguments to show that what he's bringing is true. So when they viewed Aristotle as something that had the origin of prophetic arguments that had gone wrong. Right? That was their view. Now what we view is, we say that religion is all made up, or we don't say that, but like the predominant secular academic institutions, what they say, religion is all made up, and the Greeks are the torchbearers of reason against religion. So now, what they do is they try to reduce religion to that, to show that it has non-revealed origins. So now let's say, okay, now let's look at it rationally. Okay, so now Both are possible. It's possible that they have an original revealed origin, or it's possible that they have a secular origin. And so when the secular person makes his assumption, he's making an assumption. And I need to say to him that, well, this is how we viewed it, and that's also possible. So how do I determine which one is the case? Come, I'll show you Islam is true. If I can prove to you that God exists and the Prophet is God's messenger, and that the Quran is from that being, and he is saying, وَإِن مِّنْ أُمَّةٍ إِلَّا خَلَا فِيهَا نَذِيرٌ. Therefore, my intellectual history is on sounder footing than your intellectual history. So that's that. And I would add one more thing, but I dislike saying it, but basically the one more thing is that even if theoretically it was taken from Aristotle, a philosophical argument, it needs to be judged on its own merits. And that's and the thing is that I don't think that we have to, so I don't like intellectual history. Because intellectual history presupposes that ideas are relative and they change historically from generation to generation. And intellectual history is very prevalent. So I believe that there's a truth. There's a truth. And ideas at every time should be judged on their own merit. I should say that this is true, this is false, right?
I mean, what is your opinion? Because I mean, there actually debate on this.
On what? Or whether it was taken from there?
Yeah.
No, it was
And
definitely,
also, I mean,
it was definitely not taken from there. No question about it. No, so what they say is, this is what they say, is that William Lane Craig, right? So he says he called it the Kalam cosmological argument, he actually regrets it, right? So what he says now is, he says that, yeah, I christened it the Kalam cosmological argument, but actually there was a Christian philosopher, his name was John Philoponus, who made arguments that are similar to it, and Ghazali took from him and he was Christian. Ignoring the fact that he was a heretic, deemed a heretic by the Christian church. It doesn't tell you that. But is it true that there were arguments for Khulus as evidence for the existence of God that were made before Ghazali? It's true. It's true. They were made. And could he have read them? He could have read them. But the Muslims, they developed it much further. And actually the argument is very intuitive. And it's you can see it. And so it has a divine origin.
Okay, I'm giving a room to one final question. Yeah.
I agree with you about the Kalam is referring to the Radul Shubahat. Well, we know that the history of Ibn Kalam, the main purpose of Ibn Kalam is to isbat al-aqaid, the idea al-yaqiniyah. But when we refer to Kalam 3.0, it's just if you think, it's just the purpose of Ibn Kalam is Radul Shubahat. So, what if the old Shubhat came out? Is it the 2.3.0 or 2.0 Kalam?
So actually the purpose of Kalam 2.0 is not Radul Shubahat. The purpose is that. Its purpose is that it's to prove the truth. And that's why there's like 5 or 6 arguments, the contingency argument, the Kalam cosmological argument, the argument for the oneness of God, the Vidul Tamano, the argument for the genuine messengerhood from Mu'jizat, how the Tawatur of the Mu'jizat, and we bring in like hadith stuff in it as well. So the purpose of it is to do isbat. And now the benefit, we do respond to Shubuhat, but the response to Shubuhat always presupposes isbat. Because when you respond to a shubha, you're defending something. So the problem is that in our times, we have not done sufficient isbat. And so we're just running after individual shubhas. But if we do isbat, then we have something to defend. So so if you do isbat and then anybody brings any objection, they're objecting to a particular premise in an argument that you've made, rather than just pulling something out of the air. And so now I have a system that I can use to respond to it. And a number of shubuhat are, possibly infinite. People will always, as long as there's people alive and have the freedom to disbelieve, which Allah gives to everybody, they will always believe.
Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you very much, our Sheikh, for this enlightening session. I am now honored to have assisted in bringing Sheikh here when Mullah Zaman contacted me. Where's Mullah Zaman? He contacted me. I was thinking of that is the revision week, the exam time. So, how are we going to come out with attendees and who are going to join the session? Because that students will be occupied with revision, revising and everything. So, but now, Alhamdulillah, we can see fruitful discussion. We have enjoyed the discussion, and I think there are many
recorded.
Yeah, it's also recorded and broadcasted on the Kuliah page, Facebook page. Okay, so you can also rewatch again if you miss something, and also I think you can also contact Sheikh after this. If there is a question you need to clarify on anything. But on that point, I think we express our gratitude to this opportunity, and also thank you all for coming. I think I'm just going to conclude with one thing. It's about the importance of context. You look at the statement. What is the context of whom you are speaking to? So Tamanno has a context, produce a context, and also arguments. We have to look at the context and our audience to place our khitab at the proper place. So with that, I once again thank Sheikh. And before we conclude, there's a small token of appreciation from the Kuliah that will be delivered by Dr. Mahidin. So I will come to Mahidin.
Just check. It was our second lecture. Was one of the contributors. This is a Surah Al-Karim. So I think we can.
Yeah. And another routine of our modern sessions, that is a group photo. So where's our technical support? Or is it just anyone?
I think normally we take here.
Yes.
So we sit here and others will check.
Oh, yeah, others will be here.
Will be standing.
Oh, we are saying we are still.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it is, if that's the case, then let's now conclude the session first. And then we will be in line behind the Sheikh. We'll take a photo from this side. Okay. So thank you once again, everyone, for coming. We apologize for any shortcomings and hope to see you again in our future intellectual engagements. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So we'll have Sophia. Okay.
We can just get them here or. Yeah. You can judge.
One, two, three.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yes.
Thank you very much. See you again, inshallah. And we are going to work on Dr. Tariq Aswaida on the Saturday. You can do it.